In Psalm 30, one of the reasons King David praises the Lord is because, in David's words, "You did not let my enemies gloat over me." So he didn't let David's enemies win. And David had a lot of enemies. If we were to put the list together of all the enemies, I'm sure a list already exists, but it would be a very lengthy list. David made a lot of enemies, some of it his own fault, a lot of it not his fault, but people who want nothing good for him. And the enemies that you have in your life may have some similarities to some of the enemies David had in his life, but they aren't the same ones exactly, except for one. There is one enemy that David had that you also have, and it is the one whose name literally means enemy. The word Satan literally means enemy. Satan is your enemy. And what he does as your enemy is pretty well illustrated in the book of Zechariah chapter 3. That God decided to give us a glimpse into the ways that Satan works when it comes to our relationship with God. In Zechariah chapter 3, it's a very strange sight, a very strange setting. But a high priest named Joshua, not the Joshua that took over after Moses went to be with God, but a high priest named Joshua was standing in front of God to be judged. His life was going to be judged, and Joshua was wearing his clothes, and Satan was standing right next to him. And Joshua's clothes were filthy, and it says Satan was accusing him. So it's kind of like the filthy clothes were an illustration of Joshua's filthy, sinful life, that he had committed a lot of sins. Like, imagine it this way. Imagine that when you were born, you were given pure white clothing, and every time you make a mistake, every time you sin, every time you offend God and your thoughts, your words, your actions, imagine someone takes a big, thick, black Sharpie marker and just goes on your white clothes, and you never get to change your clothes. It's just every time you sin, just... So that's kind of a picture of what Joshua is doing standing in front of God. He's wearing these filthy clothes, and Satan is accusing him, pointing out what all those different marks mean. It's like, God, when Joshua was 5 years old, he did this. When he was 25 years old, he did that. When he was 37 years old, he didn't do that. Basically saying, God, you don't want anything to do with this guy. He's nothing like you. He's not holy. He's not pure. He's not good. He's completely sinful, and he's totally dirty. God, you want nothing to do with him, which is exactly what Satan wants us to believe about ourselves. That God wants nothing to do with you. Because, quite frankly, if Joshua looked in the mirror, I'm sure there were a lot of days when Joshua didn't want anything to do with Joshua. And there are probably days when you look in the mirror or evaluate your life, and there are days that you don't want anything to do with you. That's actually pretty common for somebody who cares about their life, who cares about their faith. Anyway, Satan is accusing, and at one point the Lord speaks to Satan. He says, Satan, the Lord rebuke you. So basically, just shut up, Satan. Just shut up. And then it says that the Lord ordered that Joshua's filthy clothes be taken off of him, and he be given a new white garment that completely covered him. And wearing that white garment, Satan had nothing to accuse. Satan had nothing to say. He had to shut up, and he had to leave. And that is exactly what God did for Joshua, is exactly what God has done for you through Jesus. He's given you the gift of purity. He's given you the gift of perfection. That's what both God and Satan now see because of what Jesus did on the cross, because of the complete and total forgiveness he won for you. God has rescued you from that enemy. And notice what Joshua had to do in order for that to happen. Nothing. He just stood there. And the gift of the new clothes, the gift of forgiveness, it was given to him by God. It says you don't have to do anything in order to know that you are forgiven. You just are. And even Satan knows it. Your enemy, who tries to make you forget it, he's already been overcome. And even he knows it. Rest well tonight, my friends.